Hello, my name is Ryan Sandwick. Thank you for watching 6 Minutes with CEDIK. When we think about walkability, there are elements that immediately come to mind. We need sidewalks to keep people from walking alongside traffic. Curbs not only help rainwater runoff, but also provide a sense of protection for the pedestrians from the adjacent cars. Additional elements include lighting, landscaping, and seating, to name a few other items. However, the inclusion of these items alone does not make a place walkable. These elements, both individually and collectively, need to be designed at the human scale and in a way that not only makes people feel safe and welcomed, but in a way that also gives them a sense of dignity. When we think about what it means to design for dignity, the definition that stands out to me is the right of a person to be valued and respected for their own sake and to be treated ethically. In our built environments, this can be manifested in many different ways. The next two images exemplify this and are from the same community. One is a historic downtown street, and the second is of their bypass. If you saw someone walking down the historic downtown street, what would you think? Would you expect to see them there? And why is this? If you saw someone walking down the bypass, what would you think? And would you expect to see someone walking or biking there? When you thought about the two different streets that are in the same city, what factors influenced your perception of people who may be walking or biking down each of those streets? When looking at these streets through the eyes of a pedestrian, would you feel valued and respected on them? These streets are obviously extreme examples, even if they are located in the same community. Clearly, one of these are meant to be walked on and experienced at 5 miles per hour, as it was built before personal vehicles. The other was built as a bypass, intentionally designed to divert cars away from and around the heart of their downtown. We can look at the bypass and clearly see that it is not only meant to not have pedestrians, but actively discourages them with no sidewalks or basic pedestrian facilities. However, the inclusion of these amenities does not make a place inherently walkable. The following images represent typical conditions along the same street in that community and how the pedestrian experience can change under very similar conditions. These next series of photos were all taken from the same street in the same community. Although the cross-section of the street remains the same, the surrounding context and design cues not only inform a pedestrian if this is an area that they're meant to be, but if it was designed for them to actually be there and use it. When we look at the street on the screen, it has sidewalks and streetlights. But would you choose to walk down the street if you didn't have to? The sidewalks are essentially adjacent to traffic, save for the 1-foot strip of lawn on the right-hand side. There are no street trees to provide shade during the summer, and the streetlights are large cobra heads that are spaced far apart that are intended to light the streets for cars, not for pedestrians on the sidewalk. Additionally, on the left side, we can see that there are a number of driveways that lead to a fast food restaurant. This creates conflict points between cars and pedestrians. While this street has many elements of walkability, it is not likely that most people would choose to walk here if they did not have to do so. In this next street section, we can see that in many ways it looks similar to the one we had just looked at. The sidewalks are essentially adjacent to the traffic lanes, there are no trees for shade, and there are only streetlights on one side of the street. However, there are some differences. There is a buffer in the street between the traffic lanes and the sidewalk. The buildings are closer to the street, providing a greater sense of enclosure for pedestrians. Additionally, the smaller scale of the buildings, both the commercial on the right and the houses on the left, create a more interesting and engaging environment for people to walk through. Another effect of a more engaging pedestrian experience is that it can make a walk feel shorter than it is, enticing more people to walk out of choice than necessity. In the current image, we can see that there are some differences in the streetscape, with some elements that make the street feel more human scale. On both sides of the street, there are parallel parking spaces that not only provide a buffer between traffic and pedestrians on the sidewalks, but can also help slow traffic down by narrowing the perceived size of the lanes for drivers. On the right, we also see that there are street trees that provide shade to pedestrians and help further separate them from the traffic on the street. On the left, the commercial buildings front the sidewalk, providing an engaging pedestrian experience while giving visual cues to drivers that they are entering a commercial area that is likely to have more pedestrians. If we look closely at the end of the street, we can see that they are entering a downtown. This provides a terminated vista that gives drivers and pedestrians alike an impending sense of arrival. As we enter downtown, we can see that we have entered a more pedestrian-focused area where traffic slows down. Many of the on-street parking spaces are full, again narrowing the perceived width of the lanes and slowing traffic down. On both sides of the streets, the buildings front the sidewalks and are filled with downtown stores. The trees and awnings provide protection from the elements, and virtually every piece of the streetscape has been scaled for the human experience. The streetlights aren't 20-plus foot tall cobra heads that are spaced 100 feet apart, but rather are human-scaled historic lantern types that are spaced every other storefront. Finally, as we look at this downtown scene, We can see that not only has every element been tailored for the human experience, but that pedestrians are treated with the utmost level of respect and dignity. The streetlights have banners on them that are high enough for people to walk under, but are sized for people to read as they walk by on foot. Besides the trees, there are flower planters and benches that encourage people to linger. There are signage and window displays that catch people's attention and to let them know that they are wanted there. So, what does this all mean? It is more important to design for people and the human experience than to check off a list of items that allegedly makes a place walkable. In the image here, this is technically a walkable street. There's a sidewalk that is separated from the street and has trees for shade. However, this isn't an environment that I would choose to walk down if I didn't have to. There are 4 lanes of traffic speeding next to it, and although it is adjacent to retail, this is a pedestrian environment that is meant to look good as you drive by it at 45 miles per hour, then actually walk down it at 5. Meanwhile, this street doesn't have any pedestrian facilities. There are no lights, sidewalks, or basic amenities. However, it is a very walkable street. The narrower width of it naturally slows traffic down, and because it is a neighborhood street, it will have fewer cars on it. All of this, mixed with the residential scale, makes for a very walkable street. Cars, bikes, and pedestrians can coexist on this shared street because they're all going 10 miles per hour or less. Despite the fact that the street doesn't have the standard definitions of a walkable street, it treats all people equally and with respect and dignity. A child could learn to ride a bike on the street just as easily as a senior citizen could take an evening stroll. That is designed for dignity and walkability. Thank you for joining us as we talked about community design. Stay tuned for future videos which will be released each week on topics such as building partnership coalitions and the role of arts in community development. I am Ryan, and this has been 6 Minutes with CEDIK.